All right, so we are with Lara Ruggles, Tucson, kind of native, kind of leftist, kind of prodigal daughter returned.
I guess you could say that.
And I was doing the research for this, and I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, there's so many threads of your life that connect, but they all come through in your music. So are you first and foremost a musician?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's where my whole heart is.
Well, then let's start this interview with where your whole heart is. We'll get to the other stuff later if we have time. How long have you been in music? When did you get the desire to be a musician?
So I'm gonna take you all the way back to when I was like 8 or 9.
Okay.
And we had a piano in the house growing up. And at that point, we lived in Richmond, Virginia. My family hadn't moved to Tucson yet. And my mom was always asking me if I wanted piano lessons. And I was like, no, I'm fine on my own. And I would just plunk things out. And I knew that the protagonist in Dr. Zhivago shared my name.
Okay.
And so I listened to the song Lara's theme for, and so we pronounce it differently. But I listened to the song Lara's theme and I didn't like it because when I was 8 and 9, I liked music that just repeated the same theme over and over.
Okay.
And that piece of music, it's really melodic and it goes all over the place and it's really fun. But it's not repetitive the way that my 8-year-old brain liked to hear. And so I sat down at the piano and I still have this little piece of paper that's like sheet music that I wrote called The Real Lara's Theme.
Wait, we'll take 1 second. You wrote this, so did you get lessons on how to write, or you just...
We had books, and my mom had sat me down and taught me a little bit about reading sheet music.
Okay, so you knew what all the little letters and numbers and symbols were, and that,
more or less
at 8 years old. So because I thought you were going to tell me about mimicking the song, but you actually wrote sheet music.
I did. I wrote the sheet music.
Okay, so
yeah.
So we have 8-year-old Lara redoing Lara's song.
Yes.
Okay.
And then fast forward a couple of years and my sister started taking violin lessons and then she started to get good. She got beyond that screechy, hump of learning to play a stringed instrument and she started getting good. And I was like, oh no, my sister who's 4 years younger than me is better at music now than I am. We can't have that. And that's when I went to my mom and I was like, okay, I want those piano lessons.
Okay. And so at 8 years old, I do it on my own. Mm-hmm. Then the competition.
It was all about competition. When I was 15 or 16, I decided that I wanted to be the Arizona version of Jewel.
Okay.
Because I also lived out east of Tucson at that point, out in the desert and had gotten my own horse and kind of lived this life that mirrored hers in some ways. And so I really identified with her story. And I was but she started writing songs when she was 15. So if I want to be at the same place that she's at, I got to start now. And I got to figure out how to write lyrics and make it all come together. So that's why I wrote.
Then you're in competition with Jewel.
Exactly.
And and your sister. You got a band. Probably didn't sleep a whole lot. You had a lot of people coming at you. You had to go get it. Oh man! So you grew up here in Tucson. Then you wrote music. You lived in the desert. You were in Arizona's Jewel, and then you left us.
I did. Well, I moved away for college. I moved to Prescott for college.
Okay.
And then my last year of college, my boyfriend at the time and I moved to Colorado. He had a job opportunity there and I spent a semester as a guest student at Naropa University. And it ended up being a great place for us for quite a while. I lived in Colorado for 9 years. And then
you were still playing music, I assume?
Yes.
Or the Jewel of Colorado at that point, or had you moved on to someone else that you were going to emulate?
Well, to be honest, I took a break for a couple of years right after college just because immediately upon graduating college, I had that realization of what it actually meant to have student loans and make student loan payments. And I was oh no, I need a real job to make this work.
artist dream is crushed.
Yeah, in that, yeah. So I like sometimes I wonder like if I had it to go back and do over again, would I have quit school after my third year of college so that I didn't double my loans? Maybe. But I ended up with a job that was great for a few years and was really meaningful. But I took a break from songwriting and it wasn't until I kind of reached that point, I think that all artists do, where you just feel like your soul is getting crushed a little bit more every day. And there's no like valve for expression, that I realized I needed to take a step back and dive back into music.
And then you play now under the moniker of Sharkk Heartt.
Yeah.
With 2 Ks and 2 Ts.
Yes.
Is this something that dates back to your Colorado days, or is this more like a recent?
That kind of happened right as I was moving back to Tucson in 2016. I had released an album the year before that, and I was working on like a new collection of songs that I felt like were going in a different direction. Like looking back on it, it's not that different. It's all me, right? But like at the time I was like, wow, this is really different. People are going to recognize this as like Lara Ruggles. And I think I was also trying to create some distance between like me and my artist persona, like some kind of artifact that could allow it to like hurt a little less if someone was like, yeah, that's not my thing.
I gotcha.
And it worked for that, for sure. And so now I'm in this like confusing place where I'm like, well, I play the Sharkk Heartt songs and the Lara Ruggles songs as part of the same sets whenever I play for like more than an hour at a time. So it's kind of confusing for me and probably for my audience, but we just have to muddle our way through it.
You know what? Sometimes art is messy. Art is messy. You just have to make, and your diehard fans are probably able to point that out. Oh, that's the Lara days. That's the Lara days. I remember that back in Colorado from the first of them.
Yeah.
So your fans get to know that.
For sure.
You, obviously as a performer, you're always looking for places to perform. And I know you've worked with local venues yourself here in Tucson. And I was somewhat intrigued because you're recently served on the board of a national organization for independent venues.
Yep.
And you're still working with them. Like, how does that come to be?
That came to be through COVID and the unique challenges that the COVID pandemic presented to venues. There was a crew of venue owners and promoters that have been talking about the need to like kind of come together as more of a coalition and be able to activate together and be able to push for like funding and congressional support together. But it wasn't until COVID that they were like, okay, this has to happen. Like, if we're going to survive, this has to happen. And so they started the National Independent Venue Association, and a bunch more independent venue owners and promoters across the country just got on board and started really all working together toward the same goal, which was getting relief funding specifically for independent venues, because like as the first businesses to close and the last businesses that were going to be able to open during the pandemic, like getting a PPP loan that would be good for like 12 weeks was not going to get them through, Well,
and I didn't realize that the acronym is NEVA. I didn't know that. I thought that predated COVID, but it really, the idea did, but the association itself came about. And do you know how many members are currently represented across the country? How many venues?
I think there's something like 1,500 current members.
And I do remember going back to the COVID days that there was then successfully some legislation that was passed. And I remember talking to the team at the Rialto Theater. They're like, yeah, we just need this. Thank heavens we got this, because I don't know if we'd have the Rialto. I don't know if we'd have some of these venues if they didn't get that money. Yeah,
I think very likely we would not. It was a $16 billion grant package that got passed in Congress, which represents like the largest public rescue of the arts in U.S. history. So it was a pretty huge success. And it's been really amazing to see what's happened in the wake of that and like some of the bills or some of the local funding that has continued to be passed, because you now have this national network of owners and promoters who are like working together and saying, this is what we did in our state that worked and that got the attention of our representatives. Here's all the materials in case anyone wants to try and replicate this where they're at.
And is it still primarily focused on funding, or have they moved into other avenues of programming, or do they?
There's a lot. There's a lot that NEVA's doing. And so NEVA is the 501c6 arm that is able to lobby and work on different campaigns and getting different bills passed. And then they have the National Independent Venue Foundation that is the 501c3 arm. Is that right? 501c6 or 501c4?
C6 is the one that lets you do sort of that lobbying and legislative effort, and the C3 is the chair.
Yeah. But I wasn't. What's the C4?
That's an explosive. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that's one too. Anyway,
I'm sure. I mean, it's the or IRS statute, so it means something to somebody.
Yeah, but the foundation is the C3, and they're working on like a workforce training program called the Venue Operations Experience, VOX for short. And so they're working with like 6 or 9 different venues. They started with 3 and they keep adding 3 more and 3 more across the country to basically like create this experience, this paid internship experience, with the idea of like making getting into the music industry and learning about the music industry more accessible for a wider range of people.
Okay, so not just the musicians, but the people, the technicians, the engineers.
Yeah, and recognizing that the music industry has been like a really white dude-centric place for a really long time, and trying to change that, and recognizing that like a lot of folks who grew up in like less advantaged, like marginalized backgrounds cannot afford to take an unpaid internship. Right. And so trying to remove some of those barriers and make getting into the industry just more accessible and something that anybody can reach.
I think that you have to have, usually in those situations, you have to have some type of funding or mechanism. Otherwise, you're just going to continue the same cycle that's created what we currently have.
Yep.
And if you're going to break that, then something has to change. Paying the bills isn't one of those things that can change. You have to find a way to make that happen.
Yeah.
Do you know, like from an independent venues, I'm assuming that in places like the Rialto Theater are involved with this. Do you know of others in Tucson that are involved with NEVA?
I think that Congress is a member, but I don't know for sure. There's definitely other venues in Tucson that are members, but I haven't looked at the updated list in a while, so I'm not sure.
Just curious for I can certainly go and check that out. I didn't realize it existed until I saw it on your resume or your bio, and then when I researched it, I didn't realize that it just started. This seemed to me like an organization that had been around for decades, because you've done so much.
Yeah, I mean, when you get together like hundreds of people who just their schedules just got cleared for the foreseeable future, and they have the energy of music industry folks, like a lot's going to happen.
So then back to the music, you've released an album. Are you working on an album right now?
Yeah, I'm working on 2 different albums right now.
One for Lara, one for Sharkk Heartt?
Yes, actually.
Okay, there you go. So I'm figuring this out.
Yeah. I just finished recording and producing an album. I worked with Stephen Tracy at St. Cecilia Studios to finish up the production, and I worked with another friend, Steve, in Colorado, to start it all off. Steve Varney, who has a project called Kid Reverie that just released a new song. It's so beautiful. His music is so beautiful.
He's out of Colorado?
He's out of Colorado.
Tell him to move to Tucson.
I know, right?
I can interview him.
Yeah.
Or at least do a show at Tucson so I can get him on this broadcast.
I'll let him know.
I'm sure you'll be.
I'll send something up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do it for Tom. I'll get this whole tour going for that Tom guy.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. No, but so he's great. They're both great, and I just got the final mixes back for that album. So I'll just be working to like master and get the album art done and manufacture and set up the release shows and all of that.
So what's the harder part, where you are now or getting to this point?
That's such a hard question. Both.
It's all hard.
It all takes so much longer than you think it's gonna take starting out. Like every single album I've made, I've gone, this one's not gonna take me 4 years when I first started recording it. And then 4 years later.
Well, the recording, I mean, that you would think, okay, get the song done, that's the hard part. But then I've talked to multiple musicians that it's like, okay, the song is done, but that's just sort of like stage one of this entire lengthy process. So
yeah, because there's so much music getting released every day, and there's such a big online world out there, and like everything is dependent on algorithms, and so if you can't launch a really robust marketing campaign to accompany your album and like really get it some attention right out of the gate, then you're kind of just like releasing it into a void. And so, yeah, I think every artist is like, I want to give this baby its best chance to grow up.
Absolutely. A lot of time and effort into it. You want someone to be able to receive that message on the other end. I think messaging, I've listened to a few of your songs, and it was a quote from a magazine or somewhere where you talked about, and paraphrasing, but the music has the power to start revolution, but it also has the power to create the healing.
Yeah.
That's kind of a very powerful statement for that media. But you and your music is like that. I mean, you talk about very personal things and topics that are very specific to who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Do you remember at what point that became part of who you were? It probably wasn't your 8-year-old self, but was there a moment or a band or a person that you listened to and you're like, you know what, I can do more with my music, or it just sort of slowly happened?
I definitely think there was like a pivotal period where like as a teenager, where I was listening to the Lilith Fair generation of songwriters. I was listening to a lot of Jewel and Sarah McLachlan and Tracy Chapman and Tori Amos and Natalie Merchant, and really identifying with all of those songwriters and going, that's who I want to be and where I want to be. And so I think I knew that music could be that. But I think another part of like kind of adopting Sharkk Heartt as a stage name was starting to get a little bit more radicalized in my adult life, and realizing that I really wanted to be conveying I wanted my music to be something that wasn't just personal to me, that wasn't just like my own valve of like, how do I cope with the feelings of living in the world, right?
Right.
But something that had a bigger message.
It certainly sounds like, in listening to what I have, that you have that message combined with your story. It's not just preaching to the world, it's sort of your perspective or your evolution through some of these significant issues, and how they've helped to shape you, and how in turn it sounds like you're trying to help shape them. Yeah,
I mean, I think that vulnerability is a really key part of activism, being able to be honest about where you came from and like what you didn't know a year ago,
Yeah.
And recognizing that while maybe we all have a responsibility to take in as many different perspectives as we can, and like do the work to try and understand where those perspectives are coming from, we can only ever really speak from our own perspective, and acknowledging how limited that is.
I think sometimes people try to speak from a larger perspective, and it's very disingenuous. It doesn't come across in the same way that carries someone who is, again, like you said, the vulnerability of, this is what I know. It might be right, it might be wrong, but this is what I know, and based upon that, this is what I'm doing. Wow. Well, how do people follow you? What personality is best to track down on social media?
All of my social media handles are Sharkk Heartt.
Okay.
And I always say, I always say Shark like the dangerous fish with 2 Ks and Heart like the organ in your body with 2 Ts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the best way. Sharkk Heartt, Instagram, Facebook.
SharkKheartt.com.
Okay.
Yeah. I just got on TikTok. I have a friend who has been really encouraging me to get on TikTok for a while. And I was like, well, I quit my job. I'm spending a year focusing on music. Now's the time. Now's the time to make a little bit more space in my life for another social media platform.
Of course.
And I've been having a lot of fun with it.
Well, that's good. I think that if you, I have a whole theory of TikTok, which I will not get into here. However, are you performing any of the music? I know I saw some concert dates in Colorado, but you have anything coming up in Tucson? You got to think.
I do.
Got to check.
Yeah.
You have to check with my people, Tom.
Yeah.
I just show up.
I have a set at the Gardens at Bear Canyon.
Okay.
On May 31st. And then I'll be at Chillin' at the Chul at Tohono Chul on June 28th.
All right. We need to get you back downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. I just reached out to Congress today about doing something in the fall.
Nice.
Hopefully I'll be ready to release the album by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lara Ruggles, I really appreciate your time, your energy. Thanks for what you're putting into the world. And thanks for coming down to meet with us and chat about your music and what you're doing to strike in venues across the country.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.